Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for supporting the first episode of the season of the podcast, and I hope you will enjoy today's episode just as much. So today I'm talking with Maria James, who marched for Virginia Union University. And so I wanted to make sure that HBCUs of all sizes, of all conferences are represented on this podcast and also in the HBCU Experience, HBCU Alumni second edition book that is out on Amazon right now. Shameless plug. And also it's a number one bestseller in our category. Back to Maria. So Maria James, she represents Virginia Union University, and I want to make sure that all bands, all HBCU bands get their shine. And so I couldn't imagine what it would be like if the program that I marched for completely folded and disbanded. Now, Virginia Union is back now. Luckily, they're back now. But there was a time when the band just ceased to exist. And I couldn't imagine that in my program. I could not imagine that. But talking with Maria and finding out what somebody in that situation did, it's just a really interesting conversation. She's a cool person. And so without further ado, here's my interview with Maria James of Virginia Union University. Okay, hi everybody. I am here with Miss Maria James. Now, Maria, she marched for Virginia Union University, and I'm so glad to have her on this podcast because, Virginia Union is a smaller program, and I wanted to make sure that, all HBCU bands got some kind of light. And so, if there's anything I know about Maria, she is going to rep Virginia Union, and I'll let her get into that. But how you doing, friend?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. I'm glad to have you on here.
Thank you. I was just saying, I feel like we've known each other forever.
Yes.
Our fifth quarter days.
Yes, absolutely. So we are going to get right into it. So, Maria, why don't you tell me about where you're from? Where's your hometown?
Virginia Beach. I was born and raised in the area. Grew up in a neighborhood called SeaTac, which is at the ocean front. A lot of people really got to know SeaTac through Pharrell, who grew up in SeaTac. My mom knew his grandmother, knew the family. We attended church together. It's so funny. I can remember seeing him come in church and I'm like, you're supposed to be paying attention, but I'm like looking. Because look, he didn't just come by himself. He had an entourage coming into church. I was like, okay. So, grew up in that area, and then also Magic Hollow, which is closer to Lynn Haven Parkway. But that's where I was born and raised until I went to, lived there until I went to college in Richmond.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about your musical history. So did you grow up in a musical family? When did you first get introduced to music?
Good question. I feel like, so I'm a PK, for those who don't know what that means, as preacher's kid. So grew up in Church of God in Christ, born and raised, father's pastor. Everyone in my family had some role in the church. And so, my family, my mom sung in the choir. She actually sang in the mass choir that the Kojic has under the direction of Dr. Maddie Moss Clark. I didn't ask her about the whole shoe throwing thing, but
Yeah.
But I knew that there was a standard in music that we were raised in. So I was raised in the choir in terms of the vocal side and, singing, children's church, all that kind of stuff. So the instrumental part came because honestly, and I share, some of the story, didn't want to do, going into middle school, there was a period when you have to choose an elective. And my sister and I, who I should start off saying, I started school when I was 4. So she and I went through school pretty much in the same grade every year. And, people just thought we were twins. And so we had to choose an elective. And I just didn't feel like, I didn't want to do woodshop class. I didn't want to do home ec. I feel like, those was this cliche, stuff I just was not into. And so the only other option I think was, I think there was choir and then there was band. And so we, in 5th grade, so 5th grade year going into the middle school. So in Virginia Beach, they transitioned from junior high to middle school. So we were actually the first sixth grade class that year to be middle school students. And so the school I attended, Plaza Middle School, had always had a reputation of having a really good band program. Like if you even go back to the school now, all the trophies are around like the band room area, because they always won competitions and stuff. So I was like, you know what? I tried out the little mouthpiece. I don't know if they even do that anymore. When I was in elementary school, they had the mouthpiece and see which one fit. And I think the flute mouthpiece is what stuck with me. And so I had a cousin who was like, she mastered like all these instruments and she won awards. And so she won 2 instruments. Like she won a flute and she won a clarinet. And that became our instruments.
Okay.
So it was like one of those things where, as a mother, growing up sort of like a middle, lower class household, she wasn't going to go out and just buy 2 instruments. So when she made it happen though, she like knew, okay, we wanted to do music, wanted to do band. And it was like, talk to our cousin and her sister's daughter. And, to this day, I'm so thankful that she was willing to give up, these 2 instruments that she won. She could have said, no, like these are mine, but she didn't. She gave them away. And so I just remember that conversation of, okay, here's what we have. And I remember I'm the youngest in the family. I have a sister and 2 brothers. And I just said, I'm gonna do the flute. That was the first thing that came out of my mouth. And my sister was just like, okay, I guess I have the clarinet. That's how my flute journey started.
Okay, that's cool. So you're learning the flute, you're going through middle school, and then you get to high school. Did you march? I think I know the answer to this, being that I'm from the 757 as well, but I'm going to ask it for other people. Did you march in a core style band or high stepping?
So my journey is very interesting because I did not march in high school. Okay. I attended Ocean Lakes High School, and that was a core style type band. I actually, so going back to my middle school years, our middle school program, even though it started off with junior high, so the band director, that's all he knew. He was doing junior high programming. So we actually had marching band, concert band through our middle school years. So Dr. King, Mr. King, that's his name, he ran our program. We were treated like high schoolers. We weren't, we were expected, like the amount of discipline and rehearsals, and we didn't just get our position as flutes. Everybody had to do the chair test. You had to know your music. I remember it was Man of La Mancha, which it sounds it's a very complex kind of song for someone that young to start to learn how to play. And I remember seeing like the older girls playing the piccolos and how special that was for them to get to play that. And they had both the flute and the piccolo. So I'm like, that was something you had to work up to. It wasn't something that was just given to you. And so they ended up, I guess the city of Virginia Beach ended up, I guess at some point saying they could no longer have marching band. And so my 6th and 7th grade year, like I said, we were on it. Our program was really tight. We were winning awards. We did solo and ensemble. So we would get those, we had to do a lot of sight reading and things like that. So our program wasn't just about, playing the music, but it was understanding how to be a musician. And so, how to sit, or all of that, how to present yourself as a musician. And so I remember my band director having a conversation when I was going to transition to that last year going into high school. And he was like, well, what do you plan to do? I actually was musician of the month one of the years, because I would actually go and rehearse all the time. I was there in the morning. It was just something I just wanted to be. I had to be first chair. So it wasn't like I was going to be any other seat other than first chair. And anybody who's a musician who grew up, and it's funny because I don't know if you've watched the Wonder Years, they had something about that where the young man was talking about the chair test and how important that was. And so I share all this because, I got, when that conversation he was like, I recommend that you don't stop because, you have a gift. And if you stop, you're going to really lose a lot of your skills that you have. And I remember him having that conversation with me, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take this I'm gonna think about this. In my household at the time, my father started to become ill, and it was that transitional year of those years. So middle school going into high school, his health started to really decline. And so my sister and I made this, I feel like it was such a mature decision. We decided to, in order to not have a financial burden on our mom, we decided that we were going to not do band because we knew band was going to come with financial responsibility. And so instead, those 4 years in high school, I didn't do any band. And so we did language instead. And that was, it was interesting because I think one time I played my flute for something that was in the drama, and people didn't realize that I played. But other than that, like really when I got to Virginia Union, I just knew I was gonna be in the band.
So let's talk about that. So Virginia Union, how did you get there? Like, when did you first hear about the university? What made you want to say, yes, I'm going to go here? Tell me about that.
I feel like when people apply to college, like I don't know, I just feel like I being from the 757, I knew a lot of people were going to go to Norfolk State. They were going to Hampton. I knew Howard was, the places to kind of be where everybody was talking about. Outside of, our school, people were going to UVA and schools like that. But I knew HBCU was the only track for me. It was funny. I remember thinking, so being from the 757, Allen Iverson was like, is the man, And so I remember thinking at the time, Georgetown was an HBCU. And I remember the day when I realized that it was not. I was just like, what? Oh,
you are not the first person that has said that. I've heard that plenty of times before. And Allen Iverson went to high school with me. So
okay.
Yeah.
So it was just that, love of that. So anyways, when I was choosing which schools to apply to, my love was journalism. And I had done journalism in high school and just enjoyed writing. And so I was really looking for a school that had a good like communications program or journalism as a focus. And I don't know if you remember those big, you go into the counselor's office and they had those big textbooks. This is before, I feel like I'm dating myself, but this was like, the late 90s when it was more so you were looking at the textbooks, and then the internet was like available in the library, but the books were what I was really looking at. So I had to like find the journalism program, find what schools had journalism. And so I applied to Hampton, I applied to Howard. And I remember my mom saying, well, you need to have a third choice and, just to have some options. And it amazes me now when I see students that get like, hundreds of applications and hundreds of acceptances, because my mind wasn't there. I was just like, let me just see where I can get into. And I had good grades and stuff, but we were becoming like, I guess, technically second generation. My great aunt had went to Hampton. And really nobody else had really went to school outside of maybe community college, or they didn't go to university level. So it was my sister and I that were the first of our generation to do that outside of my great aunt. And so I don't know, Virginia Union was in that book, and I saw journalism and I was like, it's a HBCU. Look, it was checking off boxes. So I said, okay, I'm gonna apply to Virginia Union. And I found out that my great aunt's, so my great uncle, her husband, went to Virginia Union, I guess a couple of semesters before he enlisted. And so he, spoke very highly of it. And I just remember going into the library and, you kind of doing those searches and looking at the campus pictures and all that. So I was accepted to all of the schools. And I remember choosing Virginia Union, really financial reasons, because they offered me an academic scholarship. And I was like, oh, okay. Again, thinking about where can my mom get to easily? Where, what were the financial, and I kind of feel proud of myself at that time thinking of those things, because I could have initially I was thinking about Grambling. I was like, I don't know. I just had a really big thought. And I just kind of, as my senior year came, I was like, okay, the reality of she's going to have to get to me. I'm going to have to figure out these things. So at least in Richmond, you could drive to it. It was far enough that I felt like I still had that independence. So that's how I ended up choosing Virginia Union. And I will also say, not to say anything against the other schools, I still think really highly of both universities. I just felt like Virginia Union was home. It was
Mm-hmm.
small enough for me that I felt like I was not going to just be, I don't want to say just a number, because I know that people say that a lot, but it was small enough where I didn't feel too overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even go, I remember I did go to Howard's campus, and because it's an urban environment, I was like, oh no, this is not going to work, because I'm coming from little Virginia Beach, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, Norfolk was the biggest city for us, and even that was like urban. And it's funny because I felt like I moved progressively to more urban environments as I started to get in my career. But at that time, I was like, oh no, I don't see myself going across town to go to classes and all that. So yeah, so that's how I ended up choosing Virginia Union.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so let's talk about your freshman year band camp, or your first year that you were in band camp, and you had been out for 4 years, and so what was that like to transition back to being in a band, and a college band at that?
Yeah, I feel like when I joined, so this was in '99. That was my freshman year. They had I just knew in my head I was going to be in the band. I didn't know how I was going to make that happen. I even brought that flute from, the 5th grade middle school. That's all I had was my middle school flute. So I brought that with me to college. And and the first week, there was like, when you're first moving as freshmen, it was only freshmen. So nobody else was on campus. And then that second week, that's when the football players, athletes and I guess the band members, they were, able to come, and that was their band camp. And so it's funny when I was thinking then about the band camp experience, I literally, and I shared this story, I was just like, I just walked in the door. I just like, I want to, can I join? That's really, can I join? And I remember being so nervous, and I interrupted a rehearsal. So I'm just like, and Chief, Greg McCallum, he's our band director, or at the time he was the band director, had been there for, I think, since the 80s, I want to say, long history with the program. And it was just like, he was like, come on in. And I sat in the front row, and that's when my journey began. And I will say it was a lot of laughter, a lot of positive sort of, you belong here, kind of like, at first I just knew I could do it, because I was thinking in my head, like, our middle school program was structured so well that, the stuff that I experienced in college, it wasn't new to me. It was like, we rehearsed like we were in high school and college level. That's how Mr. King taught us. So, I always thank him for that accountability that he made sure we had, and also the quality. So even though I hadn't played in 4 years, I was able to pick my instrument up, and essentially, I had my fingering chart. I still had that fingering chart, the best in class. I brought that with me, and I was like, I had to refresh myself. But once I did, like, kind of like getting on back on that bike, I was able to do it. And I remember Chief being like, in this band, we don't use a flute. So you're going to need a piccolo. So, that was like my all-time, the thing I always wanted was to be able to move up to that piccolo. And so that was a little, I just had to do it. I was a little, because it was such a high pitch, people just think, oh, it's smaller, but if you've never played the flute, like, your embouchure has to change.
I was going to say, you get winded, you can get dizzy. Yeah.
And it was good to switch to that, because I feel like if I had marched, and I see people march with flutes, and, they can have it, because I felt like with the piccolo, I was able to move a little bit better, and, it was just easier to function in a high stepping marching band experience. And that was the other thing. So in middle school, we were corps style, and we were really sharp at it. So I had to learn the high stepping. I had to relearn marching, in your lines, and how to keep the line straight, and those mechanics. And the biggest thing I remember is running. That's all I remember is running, because we had to, when he said block band, you had to get to your spot in a certain time. If you didn't make it there, I mean, we literally knocking down stands. It was like serious, like to get to your spot in parade rest. And that's not moving. All that structure were things that I had to learn quickly. And I remember the other alumni band members and I guess upperclassmen, kind of showing me the ropes, showing me how to march and all that kind of stuff. And they kind of took us under their wing and showed us all that stuff. And then, so
let's talk about your, let's say, any battles that you've had that you remember, or any bands or rivalries that you face.
Oh, and if just a brief moment, go back to that question about the band camp. I did, that year, I didn't really remember like a structured band camp, but I will say the following years, it definitely was band camp. And if anybody, knows anything about band camp, it was hot, you're sweating, we're marching on the football field. The few times that they, the university allowed you, because, the precious field is
right.
Any school, like, especially I get it because the lines and stuff, and having to, at the time now, our field it's fancy now. We have like the turf now, but before it was like a regular, grass field. So they had to like, put the chalk lines and stuff like that. So during the summer was a time when we didn't have to worry about all that. And so I do remember one time we had a uniform. So we had to go get those black military style boots. And it was just told to us, like, this is the outfit that you need to have. And I remember scraping together the money. We went to an Army surplus store in the south side of Richmond. All of us, like, we pulling our money together. We helping each other out. And that's the thing that, I always loved about the band experience. It was like, if I had something, somebody else had, we checked on each other, made sure everybody was good, having to get a ride. That was a big thing, having to get the money, but we made it happen and we got those boots and we were dressed to, every single time we were ready. So I just wanted to, bring that up, that the band camp experience, it's interesting because people now, talk about that, like the strenuousness of the heat and all that, people falling out. I don't want to say we fell out, but we were close to it.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you know, like they say, like.
Exactly. Look, somebody pull you to the side and you kind of like get yourself together and, nobody really truly fell out. But I feel like, getting that water and trying to like, it was a point when you drank too much water and then that's not a good thing either. And
yeah. Oh, I made the mistake. It might've been my freshman band camp. I ate like a big breakfast and then, or maybe I ate like a big lunch or something like that. And I was like, oh, I don't need dinner because I'm still full from lunch. Oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, don't do that.
Your body. And back then I was younger. So I started college when I was 17. So
did I, yeah.
17, those younger body, you still think you're figuring all that out. Because before somebody was telling you, okay, lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now you have the freedom to do, anything you want to. You got to figure out what's going to work. And
yeah, I never skipped a meal during camp ever again because I was like, I kind of forced myself to eat. Like I was like, I have to have something on my stomach. But anyway,
all the exercise and the running. To this day, I feel like I don't know what that phobia is called, but I have a phobia of the stands. That's running up and down those stands. And I personally.
So let's talk about your stands because I heard that y'all stadium was kind of janky. I'm gonna just put it out there. Like,
it's interesting that the university, it's definitely very historic. Like I think that campus, I know it was 1899 when they first had classes on that campus. So, the history of Virginia Union, it started off as a slaves jail, like further downtown in Richmond, like kind of near Shockoe Bottom. They have like a whole statue there now that's dedicated to it. but then, eventually it moved to where it is now. It didn't always have a football field. So I guess, as time goes on, the field was there. I really feel like, now it's the, Willie Lanier football field. There's been a lot of investment. I will, shout out our wonderful president, Dr. Lucas, and his administration. There's been a lot of, and alumni as well, who've been giving and supporting to renovate that whole area. And there's more to come for that. There's more development that's going to happen that I feel, everyone says about time, but I feel like, once you become alumni, the back of the financial and all the other stuff that comes with doing that. So when I was in school, 99 till 2004, 2003, December 2003, yeah, it was on that side, the visitor side, it was rough. And to be honest, we were kind of like, y'all visitors. So
well, my friends from Norfolk State, my friends that marched for Norfolk State, they were like, oh, Virginia Union Stadium. Yeah, but they would be the visitors. They would be the visitors. So, okay, so let's talk about some battles you went through.
Yeah, and when you brought up that the Norfolk State, when I started in 99, so we still had Gold Bowl, which if anybody from Richmond, Gold Bowl really was homecoming for the university. Like the entire city of Richmond would come out. You couldn't, the street would be shut down. It was just so many people. It was really a really nice bowl game. And we also, that was when we were play some of the more competitive teams. So Norfolk State, my freshman year was Norfolk State. And so I remember them coming and sitting in the stands, and I remember thinking, okay, because I really hadn't been across from like Norfolk State per se to like for them to play and everything. And I was like, okay, this is because I feel like we had been taught, you pretty much need to leave it on the field. Like you need to, all that talking and stuff like that, like, oh, that's nice. And yeah, we're going to represent our school regardless. We were taught to have pride in our program. Mm-hmm. And regardless of whoever's sitting across from you, first of all, we needed to know our music. And everybody, had to play because, again, we were a smaller school. And so Chief was all about, he would do the arrangements and things of the song that would, I guess, cater to what we had, essentially. So all the musicians that we had and things like that. And we always got a lot of compliments because even to this day with our, our program as it is now, it's all about playing your part. Like we've even taught that to the students. You need to play your part. You need to drive. It's about you in this big group. So when a Norfolk State came, I wasn't like, oh, this is a big school. They're going to blow us out. We never really were taught like that. We were like, this is our field. This is our home. We're going to do the best show that we can and represent. So when Norfolk State came, I was kind of like, okay, that's nice. Like, and that's because I took that to heart, that loyalty to the program. So they definitely came, and we were taught of course, the visitors usually play first, and then, your home team plays last. Mm-hmm. So, and at this time, the CIAA, which, we're still a part of today, it's had a lot of changes over the years. Mm-hmm. When I started, you could play in between the timeouts. Before the timeouts, you could play. You didn't have to wait till timeout and try to figure all that out. Yep. That rule came I feel like in 2000.
Yeah, it was early 2000s because I remember online, everybody going crazy, like SWAC rules, blah, 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 all of those kinds of things. So,
yeah. And I think so other battles that, I think of, definitely Virginia State. That was definitely, I feel like our biggest in terms of rival, they always, even Gold Bowl. But I remember, that year, I think that was 2000 when we played them for Gold Bowl. It was always a homecoming or Gold Bowl, one of the two. And I remember we were like, that's when Shut Up came out. Yes. We were like, V-State, we forgot one thing. Shut up. And everybody was like, oh. I remember that whole dance routine and everything. So that was, a really good battle. I think and I feel like back then we had a lot of respect for each other as programs and stuff in general. Like, you know, a lot of that stuff, we talk smack and stuff. But at the end of the day, it was like love, everybody, you know, all that. I think Bowie State was another program. I definitely remember one time they came, their little, whatever they call those, you know, their cheering squad. They came over to our side and like pretty much like threw all of the stuff down underneath the stands, and like our whole side, like they got into a big fight, and yeah, so that, you know, we were underneath because they were like, okay, band, we need to focus. And that was it wasn't the band so much, it was like their crowd, their people came
right, yeah.
And so, but I will say, like I said, we were taught to have a lot of respect for each other and to support one another. Nobody, you know, and this is probably most band programs, nobody could walk in between our lines. You can't go in between our block. Like, and we were like ready. We fought maybe, or like got ready to fight. And, you know, just because that respect, like, you're not going to disrespect us. And, you know, we were taught to hold our own on the field, in the stands, like, our director. So assistant director at the time was Sean Owens. And so Sean became our band director after, I feel like that 2001 time. So 2001, that's when our football team won the CIAA football championship. And we went to the Pioneer Bowl. So
yes. The Pioneer Bowl was the CIAA and the SIAC.
Yep.
Oh, I remember that.
We played against Tuskegee.
Yep.
And I remember that because we rehearsed, and we were playing at the Georgia Dome. And because I don't even think they have the Pioneer Bowl anymore.
No, they don't. They would play it. It would be like either the day or the week after the Heritage Bowl. That was the MEAC and the SWAC. Yeah, because I remember going down there one time to those. So
that was a really good game. I remember actually we caused the football team to get a penalty.
Yeah.
They were already losing. Lord, I love you all, football team, but y'all were like at the time it was turned out to be like a blowout. And you know, I guess it didn't help that, you know, we were playing and like, because we know how the other teams, you know, play. So we were like playing the same way, and they called a penalty on us. And it was just like, I remember that wasn't so good. But other than that, you know, I think that was, for me, probably one of the bigger games. We did travel too. And you know, anybody who's in HBCU bands and you travel, you know, it's just like, I feel like you become more closer together. And, you know, all the experiences that you take to your grave.
Absolutely. Okay, so you kept your journalism major while at Virginia Union, and that's what you graduated with, right?
Yep, it was a mass communications degree.
Okay, good. So what are you doing now?
So I'm the external communications manager for a healthcare company. When I first started with the company, I was on the federal side. So I worked with the Army Resilience Directorate contract. So I was really proud of that work, working with the suicide prevention program, SHARP. So SHARP is also a sexual harassment and sexual assault prevention program. And so particularly we worked on that program. It was during a really challenging time when things were happening, and sexual assault was becoming it was a huge problem. And so it was really nice to be able to work on a program to develop materials and help the soldiers of the Army deal with these important issues like sexual assault, substance abuse prevention, awareness and prevention, and also this like mental health. We did talk about PTSD and, you know, all sorts of things like that. So, and I transitioned over to our corporate side. So we're working with our other sides of all the businesses and working with the media. So I transitioned, I started off in journalism. I worked for a daily newspaper. And before I left Union, I will say I had 11 internships And so
11.
I had 11.
Wow.
So I was working 2 at a time. Usually each semester I would, and I really give credit to I always say Miss Mildred Marie Britt. So Miss Britt, she really instilled with us that she worked in the Office of Workforce Development at that time. And so she, created the clothing closet. And I remember I had an internship at the Federal Reserve, Bank of Richmond at the time, which is probably the most corporate job I had at that time. Very structured. You had to wear a suit jacket. And I remember the nurse, our school nurse, and her putting their money together and buying me a jacket so that I could wear this jacket. And I had this black jacket. Look, that was the only thing I had. So that black jacket went with every outfit I had.
Yeah, well, look, I appreciate you shouting out your career services professional as one myself.
Okay.
That's what I do. And so, yeah, I'm so glad you shouted it out. That did my heart a little bit good.
It made a difference. I mean, like I still remember today, the fact that they bought that jacket for me. And like I said, started off in journalism and decided to get a master's degree.
In addition to your work and your school and all that success, I know you, if it's one thing about you, Maria, you gonna rep Virginia Union's band. And so tell us how you're still involved in helping out the band.
Good question. And I am glad you asked me that, because the band definitely, I guess all that energy, all the 4 years that I was in the band, I was actually, one of the, I guess, last people to be in the band program in, I guess, that 2003 timeframe before the band was dismantled. And so our university went without a band program until I want to say 2013, 2014. So that really broke my heart. Like all that effort, all that, when you put that much your soul into it, and for it to just be, done away with, that was really tough. Imagine going to those homecoming games and, all you're hearing is like the music on the speakers. There's no band. I was just I would sit in the space where the band was. Like, that's the only place I could sit. That's how, I felt like I was in a stage of mourning, because I was just my band is gone. And so I actually developed the nickname as Band Lady. To this day, people call me that, because within the alumni circle, because when it was dismantled, I went on a personal campaign to get the band back. I would talk to the university administration. Now imagine, I just finished school. So who am I to go to the university and say, you need to bring the band back? But I was doing it. I was talking to them. I mean, I was close to, and this is how serious I was, handcuffing myself to the administration office if they were not going to listen to me. That's how serious I was about this. And to the point where I started to try to do some fundraisers. I was getting the alumni. I would go to alumni meetings, and I would passionately get up there and talk to them about how important the band was to my life, and how it made a difference with the university, and why it was important. I had all these talking points. And I remember when Dr. Perkins, our previous president, amazing president, we have a building named after Dr. Claude Perkins. And actually his wife is actually one of my Psi Beta Sigma sorors. She came in with me with Psi Beta Sigma honorary members along with me. And so I felt like he was the one that really listened to me and was the band is important to me as well. And I'm gonna do what I can to bring the band back. And now this was, like I said, I finished in 2004, and this was up till 2000. I don't know exactly when he started, but I want to say 12 or 13. And so the band came back really as a pep band. And of course, that wasn't what I initially wanted, but I was okay, at least they're trying something. I have to. So I remember one of our band alumni, when she passed away, in her will, she put aside money. Miss Carol McCall Smith put aside money for the band. And it was because of that money that she, bequeathed to the band that started the pep band.
Wow. Well, shout out to her.
Yeah, and her family. And I'm grateful. And always, when she passed, definitely, she actually was one of the people that was helping me trying to get the band back. And she was in the band, I guess, in like, I want to say the 50s or 60s. She played clarinet, and just always still remembered her love for the band program. So when I was on my crusade to get the band back, she was one of those people who was like, willing to be the older voice of wisdom. Like, so I did not chain myself to the office of the president. Somebody talked me off the ledge, because I was like, look, and I know I made some football players not happy with me, unfortunately, because I said that, people come to the games for the band. And I feel like what I was trying to get to at the time and say was, we're just as much a part of the heart and soul of this university as the athletic programs. We're there, I kind of made that case of, without us, really, what was happening at the games? Like, people need something in between. And, I made that case. So I think people understood where I was coming from. Some of them did. But anyways, I think the whole factor of working for the band, I had to figure out how to represent the band in a different way. As an alumni, I had more of a voice, but I also had to put my own, can't just say, bring the band back, but what are you doing? And that's what they kept saying. Like, what is alumni doing to help? Because it's expensive to have a band program. And, our university, it is a small private HBCU, and we really had to pull up the resources, get donations, like, to really keep the band going. So today, we have an amazing band director, Miss Facia Cousins. And with the program, there's a band boosters. And so I am financial and active with that. But before that, I was like, we had our alumni band. So because that big break in when we had band, it was hard, because you have alumni who were part of the band in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and then all of a sudden you have this whole new generation that's coming up, and so we've had to work through that and build like a relationship with the younger band alumni, because all they know is the band as it is now. And so we've had to, really talk about, no, this band existed, in, I want to say the 50s, 40s, maybe 40s. So it had been around for a while in different stages, and even different names. Like, some people know, in that time they were like Ocean of Soul. There was the
Ocean of Soul.
Yeah, they had a lot of different names for the band.
I just think about Texas Southern. That's
they had different names, and I have to try to think of the other few names. But when I was our name became Ambassadors of Soul.
Oh yeah,
so
I remember that.
And then so that was under Sean's Owens, his leadership. We actually had a name, because the other names, they just never kept going with the program. So, and that was like different directors, and but now, we've had Miss Cousins now, I guess since that time. So I want to say since 2013, 2014. So being at the time one of the few, female band directors in the CIAA. And
or in the HBCU bands, period.
That's exactly. So and I think ECSU has also a female band director. So she took over the program and really had to make it out, something out of essentially nothing. And I think that was hard for a lot of alumni to realize that band that you knew when you were there in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it no longer existed. She had to come and create something new and give it life. And, this day, like, I look and see them perform. They have a strong sound. I know the university is really pushing to get this year with recruitment. I'm excited to see the energy in terms of financial, seeing the backing of scholarship money, because we know at this point people need money. They need money to go to school, and if you're not offering the money to recruit, it's going to be hard. So
let's talk. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the book. So
okay.
Maria is one of the authors of the second edition of the HBCU Experience, HBCU Band Alumni Edition. And I'm so glad that you could do this book. When we were asking people, when I was talking to Dr. Ashley Little about, who would be good for this book, I said, we had the first volume, who is going to represent their school? And you were one of the first people to come into my mind. I'm not kidding.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, because I was like, you were the person that I think about when I think about Virginia Union's band. And I was like, who else would be able to represent them except the band lady? So without giving everything away, could you maybe talk a little bit about what kind of things have you included in your chapter?
Yeah. Going back to just talking about what is it like to be a small band in a sea of, you have huge, like, SWAC, SEAC, like all these different divisions of, HBCU band or HBCU programs, and they're huge. I mean, talking about hundreds of members. And what is it like to be a private, small institution that still has, like, that name, that soul, like we're ambassadors of sound. That's the name we've adopted. And our, I guess, moniker, our mantra is like, hardest working band in the CIAA. And I think that that's a very appropriate title. I always feel like it gives us room to continue to grow and to continue to focus on quality. And I think that's something that throughout our band program, we've really worked hard to try to maintain quality. That even when we were small, like having that, so I do talk about that. And like, what is it like? How does it feel to be a program that is small? And that often, frankly, people would make fun of us. They would say really negative things. And this is probably how you got to know me, because I remember being in the fifth quarter, in those chat rooms, and I was going hard for my band. I'm like, y'all not going to disrespect my band program. I can break down, because I was taught how to listen into different parts and stuff. Yeah, you may be bigger, but all the reasons why as a musician you suck, and this is why, because I was taught
that's why. I'm telling you, you are like the image of Virginia Union's band for me. So I am so glad that you could be a part of this. Anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and close up our conversation, but I do want to say thank you so much. It's great having you and great hearing your story. And, I did look over your chapter that's in the book, and it's very good. And, I wanted smaller programs to be represented because you all count and you all matter too. And so I just want to make sure that y'all were well represented. But
yeah, I appreciate that. And I don't know if there's any other CIAA schools represented this go round, but
there will be.
I'm definitely proud to represent for CIAA. And as someone who used to be a part of the all CIAA band and all that wonderful time, and I, share some of that too. But it's just really about keeping arts in schools, keeping music in schools, and how important that is, and what it does to someone's life to be a musician. I think it's the foundation. So I really appreciate hearing all the different stories, and get a chance to read the other authors' works and their personal experiences.
And I can't wait till you read them. It's a good read. We've got good people. Oh man.
And before it was like a cliche popular thing, before Beyonce used bands and all these different folks want to use marching bands, we were living it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's why this book is really will be so important. It's like, what do those lives look like? And we're kind of like that different world, that different world TV show, in written form, showing other students and others who read it why band matters and why it's still part of the HBCU experience.
Yes. Well, that's an awesome way to end it, girl. It was so good talking to you.
You too.
Yes. You have listened to the HBCU Band Experience with Christy Walker. Interviews and editing conducted by yours truly, Dr. Christy Walker. The music is District 4 by Kevin MacLeod, and you can find this podcast on HBCUbandexperience.podbean.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Take care.